So we will now have a talk by K.Mombaur. Katia is a professor at Waterloo University, close to Toronto, if I'm correct, where she benefits of the excellent research chair. Prior to that, she was a full professor at Heidelberg University, where she was also leading the ORB research group, so ORB for optimization in robots and biology, biomechanics. So again, influenced by again, this same culture that we find here with Jean-Paul. Like Aishi, she is also an adventurer with a long research stay in Korea, but also, of course, in Canada and in Toulouse, where she spent 2 years. With Aishi, Jean-Paul discovered humanoid robotics, obviously. With Katia, Jean-Paul discovered that we can survive without geometry, using optimal control, numerical optimal control to discover optimal decision for the robot and explore the structure with what Jean-Paul called derogatory linear algebra, covering something that is not geometry. The work that is maybe saying the most of the collaboration between Katia and Jean-Paul was the work of InverseOptimal Control, which is still influential in the mathematical team in LAS, with both the results and the dataset widely used by our colleagues. I think that this optimal control collaboration, inverse optimal control collaboration, is the basis of your talk today. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the kind introduction, Nicolas. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much to Philippe and Jean for inviting me. It's really an honor for me to be here and to talk about my joint research with Jean-Paul, and also how that has inspired my research in the future. So I had the great opportunity to be part of Jean-Paul's team from 2008 to 2010. I was part of the French project Locanthrope, which was on discovering the fundamental principles, fundamental computational principles of human locomotion, and to spend, same as Aichi, really the 2 best years of my scientific career in Toulouse. Before I came there, I came from a scientific computing, optimal control background, and I had spent a lot of time looking at simple passive dynamic style but controlled actuated systems, looking at open loop stability, just purely optimal control, just purely in simulation, then moving over to doing complex simulations of human movement, optimization of human movement, and I had just started to get my first real robot, which was a hopping robot. So this is where I came from, and then I had this great opportunity to work with Jean-Paul in Toulouse in this project, and for me it was the first time I could really work with humanoid robots, get close to them, put my results on them. I also had the chance to work with really biomechanical human motion capture experiments, both at LAS and then also at Rennes, the groups of Julien, Armel, and Franck. And we also had that great collaboration here with the Collège de France and Alain Bertos. And I discovered that there's not only biomechanics and human locomotion, but also the neuroscience perspective and the role of the brain. But really, the best part about the project experience were the many really inspiring discussions I had with Jean-Paul about modeling human movement, about modeling robots, and about optimal control in humans and robots, and how we could use that to build this computational foundations. We had different perspectives. Nicolas already mentioned it. So Jean-Paul was really trying to convince me of the beauty of analytical optimization, as Philippe has shown it really nicely in his talk this morning. And I was trying to show him that also numerics is not that bad, and there are also quite some nice experiments can be generated by numerical optimization, and also might provide some insights into for further theoretical discoveries. But it was really amazing for me that someone with that experience as Jean-Paul was always open to discuss with me. So that was really great. So one of the things we really both were convinced of was that optimality plays an important role, and that there is a huge amount of optimality in natural motions, because motions of humans have been optimized over the course of the evolution, but also the individual learning process and training process of people over their lives, are also of becoming more proficient in activity. So this somehow gave us the justification to use optimization as a tool to study human movement, but and also to generate motions in walking robots. The big question, of course, is what exactly is optimized? I mean, we were convinced that something was optimized, but of course the precise function that is optimized depends very much on the individual situation. So a marathon runner will optimize something else than a sprinter. Small children will optimize something else than older persons or grown-up adults. And also in different other sports and martial arts or dancing, we will have all these different objective functions that are naturally underlying this human movement. So the question is, what is that? And this brought us to developing the inverse optimal control. So the standard, on the left side you see the standard optimal control approach. So this is essentially, we have a given model, we have an idea for an objective function, and then we apply that and we get a resulting solution for the system. But the problem we are facing here is a different one. We are somehow convinced that something is optimized, but we don't know what. But we have observations of the system. So we have measurements of the motions. Usually it's not full measurements, but it's partial measurements of the motions. And now we want to identify what is the optimization objectives that gave us this observed solution. The way we did it is we say there's always a lot of guesses around what an objective function might be. So usually, if you look at sport or if you look at everyday motions, there's always a lot of assumptions around what people might be optimizing, but there's also a lot of contradictory opinions. So you can just take all these ideas and put them in, create a weighted sum, and then let an algorithm determine which of these ideas is there at which importance. So we essentially developed an approach to solve the inverse optimal control problem by a bilevel approach. So in the upper level, we are comparing our current guess of the weighted objective function and what that does to the model, and the solution we get out of that, compare that to the recorded data. Optimizing over this weight term alpha. And in the lower level, we are solving a forward optimal control problem for the current set of weights alpha, and then in order to be able to evaluate again for the upper level. So the first problem we applied that to was the problem of finding an optimal path, or rather an optimal locomotion trajectory. So if I'm entering a space and I'm standing at a point A with a certain orientation and I want to go to a point B, what is the path I would be choosing naturally? And this is something that humans just do automatically without thinking, but we would like to know how they do it so that we can also do the same thing in robots and do it naturally. So just give you two small examples. So we have a robot here who starts from the green origin and wants to go to the red target. So we would expect it to not do this very robot-like straight line and then turn, so that the arrows essentially show the orientations at origin and target. So this is what we don't want. but we would expect a human and a robot to do something like shown in the red curve. In another example where the target is just a little bit next to the origin and the orientation stay the same, we would not expect such a curved line similar to the one we had in the beginning, also not something like that, but we would probably just expect sidestep. So the question is now, how can we model that and how can we generate these trajectories so that these solutions come out in a natural way, in an automatic way. We developed that model for locomotion dynamics, for walking, and that may look a bit familiar. It's builds on top of what Philippe was presenting this morning for non-holonomic systems. But in walking, we have the problem, so it's non-holonomic in many cases, but there's a few. So this was the first one I just showed you was a non-holonomic case, the left one, but on the right, it's clearly not non-holonomic, so it's clearly a holonomic way of moving. So actually, we augmented the existing model by keeping the non-holonomic part, but also allowing for sideward motions. We also could have rotations, and now we needed the objective function that generated the trajectories automatically in the way we would expect it. So this was done based on human motion capture experiments looking at many different target positions and orientations, and we came up with a combined objective function, looking at time, looking at acceleration in the different directions, and also looking at minimizing the orientation towards the goal, because that seems to be a human tendency to always wanting to look towards where you're walking. That were essentially the objective functions given to the InverseOptimal Control code, and the pink weights you see were the results, and they were really well able to replicate all the measurements we had done. So one of the important characteristics of that solution, and that's actually also what that last term does, is that something we discovered that the motions are asymmetric. So meaning we are usually not walking back on our own path. So if I go from A to B, it's not the same as if I go from B to A. So in a really cold winter at Heidelberg, a bit later we tried to visualize that. There was a rare occasion that Heidelberg Castle was full of snow for more than a month, and while Suleiman and Manish Srivastava, also two former last students, and visited me in Heidelberg, and we tried to visualize that in the snow. So you see here a person on the left is walking towards the person on the right, and that's the trajectory he's generating. But if he walks back, he will take the yellow one, which is not the same as the pink one he took when coming. So there also were, of course, more systematic experiments done with real sensors to track these trajectories, and we also came up with a good model of how big this asymmetry is in walking trajectories. So later with Manish and Marina, a student in Heidelberg, we also extended that by saying this orienting towards the goal comes from the fact that we want to see the goal, so we have to take the head into account. And that's also a lesson I learned from the Le Control project, is that the head is always leading the motions. So we also wanted to include that in the model. So essentially we augmented it a bit more, introducing not just body orientation, but also head orientation, and then having a spring-like coupling term between the head and the trunk. So essentially the head had its control, and the trunk was just leading, driven by that passive element, for which we identified parameter from also a quite big data set. So now we have a model here. You see it for one example motion from the top and from the side, how this coupling between head and trunk orientation works. currently in Waterloo, we are also trying to extend that to not just these locomotion scenarios, but also to settings where we look at communication and talking to people to improve the body language of robots during talking. Yeah. So what exactly does that help for robots? Because so far we've been mainly talking about humans. So the idea is that with inverse optimal control, you come from human measurements, you have the optimal control model, and then you take that and apply it via forward optimal control to robots in order to generate new motions for the robots. And I think HE also had them. There was also from a paper we did together with Jean-Paul and HE, where it was applied to HRP too. Yeah. Of course, inverse optimal control is really helpful for many other situations. We have and are still applying it to walking motions in very different situations, to yo-yo playing. We also started looking into emotional locomotion, movements of artists while they are doing paintings, and then also for comparing running motions of athletes with and without prosthesis, but then also for different other pathologies, or how does do cerebral palsy gaits differ from healthy patients or healthy persons' gaits, and also how does back pain affect our styles. So we still think it's a very useful tool for looking into all these situations and for identifying how humans behave and then be able to predict in the future. So after I left us, we also continued to work with Jean-Paul, first in a small ECOT project on generating optimal paths, which had mainly also algorithmic focus. What it was about combining path planning algorithms and optimal control algorithms, and then we applied it to an industrial robot setting and another a humanoid robot setting. And then out of that, we also prepared having a really big European project, which Jean-Paul also still helped very much to prepare in the beginning. Later, when it finally happened, he was very busy with being in Paris, being in Rome, and then also with his own ERC. So I was also very glad that Philippe stepped in and took the lead for Lars in this project. So that project was about, it's called K.Mombaur, and it was about developing principles for locomotion and identifying laws from humans and transferring them to robots, so taking the different embodiments into account. And that was a project in which many groups were involved. Up there was also there, and also from Lars, the HRP2 robot was involved. And even though at that time it was also already quite old, it was really the big power horse of the project, I would say. We did really, really nice things in that. One of the things also following up on optimization that we try to do in this project is to tackle the fact that optimal control is a great tool, but it takes a lot of time. So computational times may be quite large. So the idea was, there was a collaboration also with Olivier from LAS, where to think how we could combine optimization with motion primitives and with learning, so combine model-based and model-free methods. So the idea we had in this context, which just very briefly, is to use optimal control just to generate training data by applying it to many different cases. Then learn movement primitives that are simple representations of these optimized motions, and then only use these motion primitives once a new motion has to be assembled in real time. So all the expensive computations are done as a preparation, and the online motion generation only requires to find the weight of the movement primitives. And we also applied that to the HRP2 robot in LAS, and it generated really nice results. So our current research that we're doing in my group is still today very much inspired by the time I spent with Jean-Paul at LAS. We are still essentially learning, like looking at human motions very much in detail. So right now I have my own motion capture labs and I have my own humanoid robots, but we are trying to learn from humans to see how robots can acquire this motion intelligence, this intelligence to move in the real world, to interact with people in the real world, and then feed that back into robots and into humans and in two aspects. So on the one side, as Eileen also just pointed out, the robots can lead, of course, to really nice insights for human movements, but they also robots can also support humans and really improve their lives. So the examples we're looking at are in the field of humanoid robots. We still try to teach humanoids to move in a very nice way. I think the top one is not moving, so that it's actually standing up from sitting. So optimal control also helps us to do very fancy motions. We are trying to teach robots to climb over obstacles and walk stairs, and also to do manipulation tasks. We also are currently trying to teach our robot to drive the Segway, also by doing biomechanical experiments, identifying human behavior, identifying Segway behavior, and then putting it into simulation, and are currently in the process of also putting it on the robot. But on the other hand, we are also looking at humanoid robots going into medical fields, and especially we are focusing on preparing robots for doing delicate tasks like the COVID swab test, and all that has a lot of like simulation and optimization background. On the other hand, we are also working with assistance robots, so we are developing robotic rollators and also other walking and sit-to-stand assistance devices for the elderly. We are working on exoskeletons, namely lower limb exoskeletons and also spinal exoskeletons. And in all these cases, we are developing precise models which include in this case the human and the robot, and is in particular their interaction. And there we're also trying to gain a lot of knowledge for the models from experiments on how the robot or the exoskeleton changes the behavior of the human with respect to the human moving along. So this is, as I said, all current ongoing research, highly inspired by Jean-Paul. So with that, I would like to come to the end, and I would also like to show you this picture. So this was taken briefly before I left LAS. So Jean-Paul had invited the entire, so there was a farewell dinner, and he had invited the entire Geppetto team to his home, as he did several times during my stay. So I think this is a really nice memory, and I still have that picture. I got it as a souvenir gift. I still have it in my office and like to look at it. So with that, I would like to end. I would like to thank Jean-Paul very much for all the inspiration he has given me and for all his kindness. And I'd like to thank you for your attention.